how the said love sin was repented of, and led to great mourning by Honoré de Balzac. Good God, cried the abbot when the page had chanted the Kyrie a lesson of his sweet sins, thou art the accomplice of a great felony. And thou hast betrayed thy Lord, dost thou know, page of darkness, that for this thou wilt burn through all eternity? And dost thou know what it is to lose forever the heaven above for a perishable and changeful moment here below? Unhappy wretch, I see thee precipitated for ever in the gulfs of hell, unless thou payest to God in this world that which thou owest him for such offense. Thereupon the good old abbot, who was of that flesh of which saints are made, and who had great authority in the country of Touraine, terrified the young man by a heap of representations Christian, discourses, remembrances of the commandments of the church, and 1,000 eloquent thinkses, many as a devil could say in 6 weeks, to seduce a maiden, but so many that René, who was in the loyal fervor of innocence, made his submission. To the good abbot, the said abbot, wishing to make forever a good and virtuous man of this child, now, in a fair way to be a wicked one, commanded him first to go and prostrate himself before his Lord, to confess his conduct to him, and then, if he escaped from this confession, to depart instantly for the Crusades, and go straight to the Holy Land, where he should remain 15 years of the time appointed to give battle to the infidels. Alas, my reverend father, said he, quite unmoved, will 15 years be enough to acquit me of so much pleasure? Ah, if you knew, I have had joy enough for 1,000 years. God will be generous, go, replied the old abbot, and sin no more on this account, ego te absolvo. Poor René returned thereupon with great contrition to the castle of Roch Corbin, and the first person he met was the seneschal, who was polishing up his arms, helmets, gauntlets, and other things. He was sitting on a great marble bench in the open air, and was amusing himself by making shine again the splendid trappings, which brought back to him the merry pranks in the Holy Land, the good jokes, and the wenches, etc. When René fell upon his knees before him, the good lord was much astonished. What is it, said he. My lord, replied René, order these people to retire. Which the servants, having done, the page confessed his fault, recounting how he had assailed his lady in her sleep, and that for certain he had made her a mother in imitation of the man and the saint, and came by order of the confessor to put himself at the disposition of the offended person. Having said which, René de Jallanges cast down his lovely eyes, which had produced all the mischief, and remained abashed prostrate, without fear, his arms hanging down, his head bare, awaiting his punishment, and humbling himself to God. The seneschal was not so white that he could not become whiter, and now he blanched like linen newly dried, remaining dumb with passion. And this old man, who had not in his veins the vital force to procreate a child, found in this moment of fury more vigor than was necessary to undo a man. He seized with his hairy right hand his heavy club, lifted it, brandished it, and adjusted it so easily you could have thought it a bowl at a game of skittles, to bring it down upon the pale forehead of the said René, who, knowing that he was greatly in fault towards his lord, remained placid, and stretching his neck, thought that he was about to expiate his sin for his sweetheart in this world, and in the other. But his fair youth, and all the natural seductions of this sweet crime, found grace before the tribunal of the heart of this old man, although brine was still severe, and throwing his club away on to a dog who was catching beetles, he cried out, may 1,000,000,000 claws tear, during all eternity, all the entrails of him, who made him, who planted the oak that made the chair on which thou hast antlered, mean the same to those who engendered the cursed page of misfortune. Get thee to the devil, whence thou camest, go out from before me, from the castle, from the country, and stay not here one moment more than is necessary, otherwise I will surely prepare for thee a death by slow fire, that shall make thee curse 20 times an hour thy villainous and ribald partner. Hearing the commencement of these little speeches of the seneschal, whose youth came back in his oaths, the page ran away, escaping the rest, and he did well, brine burning with a fierce rage, gained the gardens, speedily reviling everything by the way, striking and swearing. He even knocked over 3 large pans held by one of his servants, was carrying the mess to the dogs, and he was so beside himself that he would have killed a laborer for a thank you. He soon perceived his unmaidenly maiden, who was looking towards the road to the monastery, waiting for the page, and unaware that she would never see him again. Ah, my lady, by the devil's red 3-pronged fork, am I a swallower of taradiddles, and a child to believe that you are so fashioned that a page can behave in this manner, and you not know it by the death by the head. By the blood. Hold, she replied, seeing that the mine was sprung, I knew it well enough, but as you had not instructed me in these matters, I thought that I was dreaming. The great ire of the seneschal melted like snow in the sun, for the direst anger of God himself would have vanished at a smile from Blanche. May 1,000 millions of devils carry off this alien child, I swear that. There, do not swear, said she. If it is not yours, it is mine. And the other night, did you not tell me you loved everything that came from me? Thereupon she ran on with such a lot of arguments, hard words, complaints, quarrels, tears, and other paternosters of women, such as firstly the estates would not have to be returned to the king, that never had a child been brought more innocently into the world, that this, that 1,000 things, until the good cuckold relented, and Blanche, seizing a propitious interruption, said, "And where it is the page? Gone to the devil. What have you killed him?" said she. She turned pale and tottered. Brian did not know what would become of him when he saw thus fall all the happiness of his old age, and he would to save her have shown her this page. He ordered him to be sought, but René had run off at full speed, fearing he should be killed, and departed for the lands beyond the seas. In order to accomplish his vow of religion, when Blanche had learned from the above-mentioned abbot the penitence imposed upon her well-beloved, she fell into a state of great melancholy, saying at times, "Where is he, the poor unfortunate, who is in the middle of great dangers for love of me?" And always kept on asking like a child who gives its mother no rest, until its request be granted it. At these lamentations, the poor seneschal, feeling himself to blame, endeavored to do 1,000 things, putting one out of the question, in order to make Blanche happy. But nothing was equal to the sweet caresses of the page. However, she had one day the child so much desired, you may be sure that was a fine festival for the good cuckold, for the resemblance to the father was distinctly engraved upon the face of this sweet fruit of love. Blanche consoled herself greatly, and picked up again a little of her old gaiety and flower of innocence, which rejoiced the aged hours of the seneschal, from constantly seeing the little one run about, watching its laughs answer those of the countess. He finished by loving it, and would have been in a great rage with anyone who had not believed him its father. Now, as the adventure of Blanche and her page had not been carried beyond the castle, it was related throughout Touraine that Messer Brian had still found himself sufficiently in funds to afford a child intact remain the virtue of Blanche, and by the quintessence of instruction drawn by her from the natural reservoir of women, she recognized how necessary it was to be silent concerning the venial sin with which her child was covered. So she became modest and good, and was cited as a virtuous person. And then, to make use of him, she experimented on the goodness of her good man, and, without giving him leave to go further than her chin, since she looked upon herself as belonging to René, Blanche, in return for the flowers of age which Brian offered her, coddled him, smiled upon him, kept him merry, and fondled him with pretty ways and tricks which good wives bestow upon the husbands. They deceive, and all so well that the seneschal did not wish to die squatted comfortably in his chair, and the more he lived the more he became partial to life. But to be brief, one night he died, without knowing where he was going, for he said to Blanche, "Ho, ho, my dear, I see thee no longer is it night." It was the death of the just, and he had well merited it as a reward for his labors in the Holy Land. Blanche held for his death a great and true mourning, weeping for him as one weeps for one's father. She remained melancholy, without wishing to lend her ear to the music of a second wedding, for which she was praised by all good people, who knew not that she had a husband in her heart, a life in hope. But she was the greater part of her time a widow in fact and widow in heart, because hearing no news of her lover at the Crusades, the poor countess reputed him dead. And during certain nights, seeing him wounded and lying at full length, she would wake up in tears. She lived thus for 14 years, in the remembrance of one day of happiness. Finally, one day when she had with her certain ladies of Touraine, and they were talking together after dinner, behold her little boy, who was at that time about 13 and a half, and resembled René more than it is allowable for a child to resemble his father, and had nothing of the sire Brian about him, but his name told the little one a madcap, and pretty like his mother, who came in from the garden running, perspiring, panting, jumping, scattering all things in his way, after the uses and customs of infancy, and who ran straight to his well-beloved mother, jumping into her lap, and interrupting the conversation, cried out, "Oh, mother, I want to speak to you. I have seen in the courtyard a pilgrim, who squeezed me very tight." "Ah," cried the chatelaine, hurrying towards one of the servants who had charge of the young count, and watched over his precious days, "I have forbidden you ever to leave my son in the hands of strangers, not even in those of the holiest man in the world. You quit my service." "Alas, my lady," replied the old equerry, quite overcome, "this one wished him no harm, for he wept while kissing him passionately." "He wept," said she, "ah, it's the father." Having said which, she leaned her head upon the chair in which she was sitting, and which you may be sure was the chair in which she has sinned. Hearing these strange words, the ladies was so surprised that at first they did not perceive that the seneschal's widow was dead, without its ever been known, if her sudden death was caused by her sorrow at the departure of her lover, who, faithful to his vow, did not wish to see her, or from great joy at his return, and the hope of getting the interdict removed which the abbot of Marmaustiers had placed upon their loves, and there was a great mourning for her, for the Sire de Jallanges lost his spirits when he saw his lady laid in the ground, and became a monk of Marmaustiers, which at that time was called by some Maymaustier, as much as to say Maus Monasterium, the largest monastery. And it was indeed the finest in all France.